somewhere the Prophet ﷺ mentions the greatest name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And does anyone know what the greatest name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is? Many of the scholars mention a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said that it is in Al-Baqarah and Surah Taha. And so it's Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. Allahu la ilaha illahu Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. And وَعَنَتِ الْوُجُوهِ لِلْحَيِّ الْقَيُّومِ. The ever-living, the ever-sustaining. And of the benefits of that, the scholars mention, is that Al-Hayy speaks to all the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and attributes that emanate of His very being, of His very presence. Al-Qayyum, sustaining, refer to all of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that refer to fi'liya, His doing subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is ever present, ever doing. And so all of the names and attributes stem from them. So many of the scholars say, Ismullah al-A'zam, the greatest name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is an Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. So you have Allah, Ar-Rahman, Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum. How do you go beyond that? And how do you start to understand them more? The Prophet ﷺ says Allah has 99 names. Man ahsaha dakhal al-jannah. Whoever establishes those names enters into paradise. The scholars say ahsaha means hafizaha, da'a biha, wa amila biha. 3 things. You memorize the name, you make dua with the name, and you act with the name. Again, hifz, you memorize it. 2, you make dua with it. 3, you act with it. These are the 3 rights and the 3 ways in which we honor a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we come across it. And subhanAllah, when you look at these names of Allah, there are so many names that are almost foreign to us, right? And if you bring them into your dua, they are so enriching. And you think about Al-Ahad, with Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Ahadun Ahad. You say, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. How many times have you called upon Allah al-Azim? How many times have you called upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-A'la? And this is actually a great spiritual exercise to go through the names of Allah and to see which one of them you have not made dua with. And make dua specifically with that name. Spend some time with that name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Read about it, establish it, memorize it, make dua with it. And then you can establish a dua that stems from the name. Ya Rahman arhamni, Ya Ghafur ighfirli, Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'afu anni. So you can establish, O most merciful, have mercy on me. O most forgiving, forgive me. O you who pardons, you love to pardon, so pardon me. Ya Razzaq, O you who sustains, grant me rizq. You call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the names that simply extol Him. Because remember, dua is also thana, it's just praise. Ya Majid. Have we ever called upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Al-Majid? Spent some time with that, glorifying Him. You're seeking guidance. Ya Hadi. Oh Allah, guide me. And so there's so much you can do with these names once you start to bring them into your dua, and your dua becomes so rich. SubhanAllah. Your relationship to Allah becomes so much more personal when you start to do that. And it is a Ramadan assignment. If you do it with your family, you do it with your friends, you do it with your group, take a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, how can I incorporate this into my dua? Now to build on that, inshallah ta'ala, and this is such a long topic, so I'm doing my best. But you also do tawassul bil asma' was sifat. You call upon Allah with His asma', with His names, and with His attributes. And the attributes, as the scholars mention, is a way in which you can further personalize. How? Allah is as-Sami'. He's the all-hearing. When Zakaria alayhi salam says, إِنَّكَ سَمِيعُ الدُّعَاء, you are the one who hears all my du'as. يَا مَنْ تَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبِ وَلَا تُبَالِي. Oh, you who forgive sins and you don't mind. That comes from Al-Ghafur. So every name of Allah has attributes embedded within it that you can then extol. بِعِلْمِكَ الْغَيْبِ وَقُدْرَتِكَ عَلَى الْخَلْقِ. Oh Allah, by your knowledge of the unseen and your power over all beings. So you say, Oh Allah Al-Alim, Oh Allah All-Knowing. And then start to praise His knowledge subhanahu wa ta'ala and the attributes of that knowledge. That which is specific to you. تَعْلَمُ مَا فِي نَفْسِي. You know what's inside of me, Oh Allah. Start to personalize, and by the way, you don't have to do that part in Arabic.